Assalamu alaikum. This video is got initiated by some of my wife's comments because whenever I opened a new game and presented it to her and we played the first session and I said, wow, that was a good game. And her comments would be, well, it was fine. And her comments are always that I like every kind of game or I tend to like every kind of game. But that's not really true. So I kept thinking that, okay, what are the games that I don't really like? And then that's what led to this list that what are the popular games? I'm not talking about each and every game, but at least the popular games which make it to the BGG top 100 or at least are very famous games which I don't fancy that much. So these are good games. I'll play them, but I don't really have an affinity that I want to play them over and over again. So that's what this list is. These are, in my opinion, the most overrated games. They are praised by many reviewers, they are liked by many people, but I think there are far better games than these. And I don't see that why you should be playing these games as compared to many other games. So before I go into top 10, just like always, there are going to be some honorable mentions as well. So the first honorable mention is going to be Dice Forge. This game got a lot of praise and I don't have it anymore right now because I sold it off. Dice Forge has a very beautiful table presence, no doubt about it. It had beautiful artwork, and the biggest gimmick that Dice Forge had was that it had removable dice faces. So you could remove the face of a die using plastic tools, and there were new faces available. So you were going to actually get resources, and using resources, upgrade your dice, get better resources, and then get better resources using those dice. But that's the whole game. Go to a location, get some resources, and using the dice, now hope to get better resources. And before your dice gets more powerful, the game becomes over. So other than the gimmick, the game was too simple for me, and that's why maybe I didn't like it that much. So it was too simplistic. Anyway, that's one of the reasons that I let go of Dice Forge, because it was too simple. So it's ranked at 368 on Board Game Geek. So it's still in top 400 or top 500 games. But in my opinion, I wouldn't give it more than 6 out of 10. Then next is going to be the Funkoverse series. Now, many skirmish gamers love this game. The back and forth. I was hesitant on it, but Tom Wessel from Dice Tower really loves this game, so I thought, okay, I have to give this one a try. And the version I got was actually the Game of Thrones one, because at least it looked much better, or more gameplay looked inside. Game modes looked more interesting in that one. The area control, the tower control, those kind of mechanisms were there. There were the dragon shards that you had to collect. So they looked more interesting than your regular skirmish games of Funkoverse. So I got at least one of those packs. But in the end, it was again too simplistic. So Funkoverse as a system maybe ranked highly, but the Game of Thrones is ranked in 2000s, but that doesn't matter. To me, Funkoverse was a very simple skirmish game. And if you're looking for a skirmish game, especially for 2 players or 4 players, there are far better games that are available now, because I see that every month, especially these days on Kickstarter, a new skirmish game is announced. So you can always go better, go with Unmatched even, and you will have a much better time than Funkoverse. Next is going to be, I still keep Funkoverse because my wife has not played all the game modes with me, and I'm hoping that at least I want to give it one more try with other game modes and see if she really or I really like it again. Next one is going to be Smallworld. Yeah, one of the famous games from Game of Wonder, Days of Wonder, sorry, not Game of Wonder, Days of Wonder, and I still keep it. So this was hailed as Okay, if you want area control game, if you're coming new in gaming, this is the game that I got when I was coming new into hobby board games. So I got this as the, well, your gateway to area control games. The problem with this gateway is the concept of that decline of civilization, that you're in control of a civilization and then you have to take a decision when that civilization goes into decline and then you can pick up a new civilization, was too crude or too um, not familiar to many people. So I wouldn't call it a gateway game, and that's why maybe it didn't got played in my home that much. And that's why I still keep it, because I still want to play it at a higher player count as well, and I keep the game. But it's ranked 281 on BGG. That maybe if after playing at a higher player count as well, I keep having the same feeling or it doesn't get played much, maybe I will just have to cull that game as well. Then the last one on the honorable mentions is going to be Escape Curse of the Temple. Now, my wife loves this game. This is a real-time game in which you are rolling dice, and based on Yahtzee kind of mechanism that you will roll the dice. If you got the right symbols, well and good. If not, you can re-roll any number of dice that you want, unless you get a black symbol which makes the dice locked. So you keep on rolling. There is no limit to how many times you can re-roll, because it's a real-time game. You're working against the clock. You keep on rolling. You match the symbols until you match the symbols on the tile, and you keep moving through the maze of labyrinth that you get to develop through the tiles. What you're trying to do is, on these tiles, try to find out spots where you can return the cursed jewels that you have taken, and then find the escape route to actually escape this temple before the doors closes forever and you are trapped in it. So you have to escape this temple. Now, even though yes, it is a frantic fun game, it is highly praised, but to me, after one session or two session, you're just exhausted by this game, and the session is going to last around 5 minutes. So in the end, you just played for 5 or 10 minutes, and then you put this game away for many months and never play it again. So to me, that's why it's on the honorable mention list, that's not the kind of game that I want to keep with me. But my wife loves it, so I still keep this game. But for me, it's not one of my favorites, because to me it gets very less playtime as compared to the amount of space it covers on the shelf. Now, let's get to the actual Escape is rated 588 in on BGG, and my rating would be 7.2. Now, let's get into the actual top 10 now. These are the top 10, in my opinion, most overrated games on BGG by the people, and or in general, because it might not be BGG, it might be some reviewers who actually put these games many times on their top 10s, but I just don't have that kind of affinity with them. So on number 10 is going to be Barenpark. I am a Phil Walker Harding fanboy. I love all his games, and Barenpark is a good game. So don't get me wrong about it. It's a good game. It's ranked 304 on BGG, but my rating is 6.8. It's still not a bad rating, but the kind of praise this game gets, Shut Up and Sit Down, Dice Tower, and many other people, even in general people, if you ask them your favorite tile placement games, it will be in their top three tile placement games. But to me, it's a very, very simple tile placement game. And if you want a more simple tile placement game, Carcassonne, in my opinion, is a much simpler tile placement game and is more fun, in my opinion, as well. But anyway, I'm not comparing Carcassonne to Barenpark. They have different kind of mechanics other than tiling. But when it comes to Barenpark, again, as I said, it's not a bad game. It's a fine game. Just the thing is, the kind of hype it gets, There are far better tile placement games, in my opinion, than Barenpark, and that's why I think it's an overrated game for such a simple game that it is. So that's why I even bought its expansion pack, Bad News Bears, and I still own the expansion as well as the game itself, because the Bad News Bears added more modules that you can play with. It added the monorail on it, and it does improve the game a little bit, but still the core essence of the game is still too simple in my opinion. On number 9 is going to be One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which is ranked 461 on BGG. Werewolf is a phenomenally successful social deduction game. Uh, it has so many variations, so I'm putting it all together. In my opinion, or at least as far as I can see, One Night Ultimate Werewolf is the most successful variation of Mafia, Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Alien, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, Daybreak, whatever you call them. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is the most successful of those, where everyone is going to have different roles, and then you are going to just try to figure out by talking with each other that who has what role, who is the werewolf, who are the villagers, and werewolves are trying to kill the villagers while villagers are trying to kill the werewolves. It is a very group dependent game, and if you have not a very talkative or the right kind of group, then this game really doesn't work. So that's why in my gaming circle, this game will, well, ideally never work. That's what I think. And that's why actually I think it's too overhyped, because it's not just about my game group, it's just because in most of the game groups, if you see a playthrough of this game on the internet, you will find that the people are actually a lot invested in it. But that's not the kind of people that you are going to find in real life. Not just me, but many people. And that's why I say it's a very group dependent thing. And if people don't really invest in it, if people don't really understand it, if people don't cannot do role play well, they will not be doing this well. It's same with, well, Dungeons and Dragon kind of thing. If you cannot role play well, the games of Dungeons and Dragon can fall flat. Same will be here, and that's why it's a very non-structured social deduction game. So the game layer is very thin, and that's why I think it's a bad game, which is overhyped a lot. So I give it 5.9 out of 10. Castles of Burgundy is going to be my number 8. Castles of Burgundy is the magnum opus of Stefan Feld, who is famous for making these point salady games. Castles of Burgundy has a nostalgic factor. That's why it's very famous for many reviewers. And it is ranked number 15 highest game on BGG. Number 15. So it's ranked very highly. But in my opinion, it's overrated. Because now if I pick this game up, the quality of the production is poor, and the game itself is okay. You're rolling dice. Based on the dice, you're picking something up and putting a tile down. Something which is being simulated a lot in roll and write games these days a lot as well. So it's a much more glorified roll and write in my opinion with tiles. So in an era when those didn't exist, this game came out. It was a fascination, but to me, somebody can fancy it up. There is a dice version of it, which is a roll and write, but to me, it's not really as special as people think. So for modern era, if you pick it now, if you have already developed a taste of so many games, if you ignore all the media and the hype behind it, this game is, in my opinion, not that great. It's a very simple game, and well, at least not all the mechanisms are simple, but there is no real theme behind it. There is no sense behind it. That's common with Stefan Feld, but it doesn't evoke anything special which would put it on rank number 15. So that's why I think On my number 8, Castles of Burgundy is an overhyped, overrated game, and I'm just not a big fan of it. I'll play it, but I'm not a big fan of it. So my rating for this game is 6.98. The next one is going to be a controversial one. On number 7 is going to be Wingspan. Wingspan is rated number 23 on Board Game Geek. There are lovers of Wingspan, but in my opinion, that love comes mainly from the production of the game, from the art of the game. When it comes to the actual gameplay, the game is very, very thin. It's not very intuitive for new players to start playing with. I started playing this game with my parents, thinking that okay, this theme and this kind of easy gatewayness will actually attract them, but that was a mistake as well. I could see that they didn't really grasp the concept of this game, and how the engine building works is very slow. You will never get to build the kind of engines. It is at its core an engine building game, but there are so much far better engine building games and much cheaper engine building games that you can get, which are going to let you do so many things. So if you ignore the theme of the game, then gameplay wise you can bet so many other better games. So for example, even oh my goods, it comes in a small deck of cards, and to me that's a better engine builder than Wingspan. But Wingspan has a much better production. So other than the production, the gameplay is very thin and not very intuitive in my opinion. So that's why I give it 6.9. Again, not a bad rating, but that's mostly because of its production rather than its gameplay. So gameplay wise, it's overrated. People rank it very highly. For some people, it's in their top 10. For example, recently there was the Dice Tower's top 100 games of all time, and this was the number one game for the people. And I think it's overrated. Next one is going to be Patchwork. Again, a tile laying game. Maybe it's me and tile laying games. I love tile laying, but when the tile laying games is just distilled down to just tile laying, I think I prefer only Carcassonne for that. But Patchwork, again, it's overhyped. It doesn't look pretty, at least the original version. It doesn't look pretty. And there are so many other Tetris shaped pieces games right now. With Patchwork, maybe when it came in its time, there was a, it had some meaning, but now people are just playing with the nostalgia factor, same as with Castles of Burgundy or Smallworld, that these games came out as the first in their line, and that's why people remember them as great games. But if came out today, forget everything. If that game came out today, people will say, well, I have Isle of Cats, I have this game, I have that game, well, I have Copenhagen, which is far better than this game. Then why should I like Patchwork? And you will not be able to give any reason for that. And that's why Patchwork, even though it's rated number 94 on Board Game Geek, my rating for it is just 6.5 out of 10. Next one is going to be a darling for Eurogamers, which is Concordia. Concordia is ranked number 19 on BGG. I've sold my copy. I think I played it 3 times, 4 times. That's the maximum I played. But it was just too much dry for me. The cards were really bland. You are taking a handful of cards, and the cards are actually giving you the actions that you can take. You can build your card, so it has some deck building elements. You can build your cards to have more options available to you, what you can do, and those can be point scoring cards as well. Then you are using those cards to actually move around this area of Rome or Egypt. Different maps come with it that you can roam around and have production in those areas, and using those productions you can slowly build more and more kingdom across this land of Rome. But to me, again, it was, well, it was just okay. It was not bad. It's just an okay game. As I said, the Coffin box was, I think, out of date. It could have easily fit in a modern square box as well. But why they did what they did, and the game is too simple. There is no real artwork inside the game. All these factors led to actually me not liking the game that much as compared to the hype that Concordia gets. Look at Shut Up and Sit Down's review of it, and anyone who will look at that will get so much hype that there is no better game than this. But to me, again, it's not really that great of a game. So it's ranked on BGG as number 19. My rating is 6.9. A fine game, an okay game, but I'll not recommend it to anyone. The next one is going to be Seven Wonders Duel. Now, out of all the Seven Wonders, I think Duel is most of the people's favorite variation of Seven Wonders, because it streamlines a lot of things in Seven Wonders, and the drafting pyramid that it becomes is actually very intuitive. And yes, it is intuitive, but the game itself is still an okay game. The core elements of Seven Wonders are still the same. You pick up a card based on the symbol that you have. That's the amount of production that you have in your city. Using those, you can build something, your wonder, or future. It will help you with your future buildings as well. It's ranked number 17 on BGG, but I don't have any additional thing to add in its description other than, well, you can build things, or you can go using those symbols, go on the science track or the military track. The only really unique thing about it is that, which was in Seven Wonders base game as well, that you can have multiple paths of victory. You can get a lot of science achievements or military victories, and you will win. But it's actually really hard to do that because those are more obvious than the point system. So if you are increasing yourself on the military track or on the science track, then people, or at least in this case the other person, dual case, because this game is only for two people, the other person knows that what you're doing. So if they exactly know what you're going for, they are going to block you from doing that. So then you will never be able to get that done. You will never be able to get, unless the person was not paying attention at all that what's happening in the world, because it's a two-player game. In a four-player game, there is more possibility of that happening, but in a two-player game, there is no possibility unless you are playing with someone who is interested in their phone rather than the game. So to me, those mechanisms of alternate victory are not really a mechanism which is going to be of interest of that how that I should give a better rating to the game, because they don't actually work unless they had that as a hidden information somehow. It really doesn't work. Okay, next thing, Seven Wonder Duel, if I have not told before, is rated number 17 on BGG. My rating is 6.7. King of New York. So I have, for example, I still keep Seven Wonders Duel just in hope that I see the spark in it that others see. I have the King of New York copy with me. Well, you can pick up King of Tokyo, which is rated actually higher than King of New York. But when I saw the mechanisms of King of Tokyo and King of New York looked a much better game. I never fancied picking up King of Tokyo because, well, it's a Yahtzee game and that's it. Why do you have a board? Doesn't make sense. At least if you get King of New York, there is some sense of why there is a board, why there are different locations, because you can destroy the things on the board as well. So now having these cool standees and a board makes sense. Okay, but the core game is just Yahtzee. You throw dice, okay, you like some symbols, you pick them up, you don't like some symbols, you re-roll them. You re-roll multiple times, and whatever is there now, that's how much hits you can hit to the person who is in New York or Tokyo, the Manhattan or Tokyo, and rest of the things might be healing you, or you might be destroying some buildings. and that's what the game is. So it's a very simple game. To me, this suits only children. It's not really for gamers. I know gamers like it, but I don't see the fancy behind this game. It's so simple. It's that it reaches the borderline of that I'm not interested in it playing it. Yes, there are some cool power up cards, but in my opinion, what I have seen is that the game ends before you can build a really powerful monster. So that's King of New York or King of Tokyo. BGG rank would be 346. My rating would be 6.5. So even though this game actually defies my BGG ranking list because it's not in the BGG top 100 list, but this game is loved so much. It's ranked so highly or praised so highly by people, and that's why it made it up to my number three of this list. That it's totally overrated in my opinion. So the more high you go on this list, I think it's more overhyped as compared to the gameplay that you get out of it. Number two is going to be Aeon's End, and especially the game that I'm going to put here on my experience that I'm going to use to compare this is the Aeon's End Legacy. Aeon's End by itself, actually, I think there are two versions of Aeon's End which are in the BGG top 100. The Aeon's End, the normal core box, and the Aeon's End New Age. Both are in BGG top 100. The core box is, I think, at BGG rank 65. My rating for it, 6.6. Why Aeon's End is overrated? Aeon's End is a deck building game where you will be building a deck and fighting monsters. It's a co-op game, but the unique thing that it introduces is that you never shuffle your deck. Okay, but the problem is that most of your cards you will have to discard in a specific order anyway. So you don't have full control. You have some control, but you don't have full control of how your cards get discarded because you have to use your spells first. So they will get discarded first. You have to use your gems later to buy things. So they will get discarded later. So even though you have choice of which gem goes up, that doesn't really matter because if you wanted your spells to move up, you are not allowed to do that because so the game creates a fake sense of, well, I'm in control of how my deck gets discarded. And yes, you can do that, but only up to a limited extent. The turn structure limits how you discard your cards, and that's how your deck is going to be there. You will not be shuffling that. So the element of that it's your strategy how you discard cards doesn't really work. uh, it works but only up to a certain extent. The legacy element which lowered my opinion of it was that as you move further in the legacy, the game actually not only made the enemies harder, well, it how it made the enemies harder was by decreasing your abilities, which is not a mechanism that I like. I like it when the game makes me powerful and makes the enemy powerful as well. So I feel empowered that I'm actually fighting someone and I'm killing them. I feel empowered. But in this game, to make the enemies feel powerful, they made me weaker. So I'm not going to reveal what that mechanism is. You can check the review of Aeons and Legacy that I did. But that was also an element which I didn't like in Legacy. I understand that's not an element that you will find in the regular Aeons, and but still, when it comes to deck builder game, its charm was quickly worn off because there are far better deck building games that I can play as compared to Aeons and Legacy. So that's why, in my opinion, it's a very, very highly rated game, and I just don't see that why people love it so much when there are far better games that are available. And on number one, just like Wingspan, is going to be again another controversial pick that only I think I'm the only one in the world who thinks this is a bad game, and that is Marvel Champions. Marvel Champions is an LCG from Fantasy Flight. Uh, Needs no introduction. So it's a card battling game co-op. You will be taking one enemy and you will be using your hand of cards to fight it. It's not a deck building game, it's a deck construction game. That is, you set up your deck before you fight the enemy. If you play only the core box, then there is no customization that you can do. So essentially, you have a fixed set of cards. You're always just picking up cards from that and hoping that you beat up the enemy. That's not really fun, in my opinion. There is no thematic story that comes out of these fights. There is no charm in deck construction because the core box that Fantasy Flight released doesn't have enough cards for customization. And even though the price is high of this game, the game elements in the core box are just not enough. And you need to buy additional expansion packs, booster packs to get more heroes, get more cards, and then have more customized experience of that. And that to me is a broken model. You are selling me half a product. Okay, leaving that aside, gameplay wise, I think it's just an okay game. If you want a better game, the Fantasy Flight could have looked in their home at a card game like Arkham Horror, where they are using the cards to make up a board, and each scenario actually uses that board in a different way. Sometimes you are on a train, sometimes you are in a university, sometimes you are trying to find some missing persons, and it is so thematic. The scenarios come alive, and there is randomization in that as well when you are playing those scenarios, so that next time you play, things can happen differently as well. But in Marvel Champions, nothing is there. And to me, this was really a step back from what Fantasy Flight had learned from Arkham Horror. So to me, this was the praise it gets, people put it above Arkham Horror, and that frustrates me. That this is a step back eons ago, and people are loving it just because it's Marvel. I'm a Marvel fanboy, but that doesn't mean that you can release a substandard product as a overhyped game. And that's why that's my number one, in my opinion, the most overrated game I have played to date. Again, I didn't want to buy it, but my wife loves Marvel as well. So that's why I gave in. I said, okay, I'll buy, I will see what all the hype is about. And uh, I was right. It was overhyped. My wife didn't enjoy it. It was so overhyped that my wife didn't even want to finish playing with every combination or every enemy, even in the core box. There are just three enemies, and she didn't even want to play it. That's how much she was disinterested in playing this game. And I felt the same way as well. So that's why, in my opinion, this is the most overrated game that you can find these days. So that's it. These are my top 10 overrated games with 4 honorable mentions as well. So which does tell that even though I'll play these games, except few, I'll play these games, but I don't really like all the games. I am an omni gamer. I like all type of games, but there might be particular games which I play and think that this was just an okay game. So again, this does not say that I don't like a certain type of games. This list is just comparing the BGG top 100, that okay, these are the games people really like, reviewers really like, and I thought they were either just okay or not really that great, and you can always go for a better game, in my opinion, than that. So hope that was interesting to you. And for most of these games, I did give you alternate game names which you can try instead. So quickly, for example, instead of Barenpark, go for Carcassonne. Instead of One Night Ultimate Werewolf, go for Resistance or Deception Murder in Hong Kong. Instead of Castles of Burgundy, pick up any role and write. And that will be much better. Even go for Guanchan Clever or Dopplet So Clever, whatever you call it. That's like Castles of Burgundy, points, points, points everywhere. Roll dice and get points. Instead of Wingspan, get Oh My Goods. Instead of Patchwork, get Copenhagen. Instead of Concordia, well, resources, area building, get Brass. Get instead of Seven Wonders Duel, if you like drafting games, then get Bunny Kingdoms. Instead of King of New York, if you like Yahtzee game, Elder Sign, yeah, get Elder Sign instead. At least there's much better theme and a game there. Instead of Aeon's End or Legacy, Aeon's End Legacy, if you like deck builders, then get Clank Acquisitions Incorporated. If you want Legacy one, Clank Acquisitions Incorporated Legacy will serve that case. Or if you want just a deck builder fighting game, cooperative or non-cooperative, get Hero Realms. It has fantasy theme like Aeon's End. Then instead of Marvel Champions, get Arkham Horror, or if you want the Marvel theme, get Marvel Legendary. So there you have it. All these overrated games and the alternate games that you can play instead, which are far better than these games that are in the overrated list. So hopefully that is useful for you, and maybe if your taste or the reasons that I gave you made sense to you, then maybe you don't need to buy out these games just to find out that really they were not that great. Because many times our opinions get pushed by the opinions of the reviewers as well. Well, the whole world is liking it, so maybe I am the problem. I should be liking it. So never think like that. Try it for yourself. Try it again if you are not sure. Just like I want to give some games another try as well. And if you still don't like it, maybe that's not the game for you. And just move on from it. So hopefully this video was useful for you. And if you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and like. And in the comments, do tell me that what do you think are your overrated games. And of course, I know there are going to be people who don't agree with my opinion. So leave those as well in the comments below. That's it for me. Happy gaming.